questions. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. It's an exciting day. As people have just learned, we're launching the app this week, April 15th. So it'll be in the iOS App Store. Ryan, I know you got a chance to check out the beta. I wonder if you could share some of your thoughts for those that haven't been able to use the PowerTrade app yet.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I think right now in this market, it's like ease of use and simplicity is sort of the key because, I've been doing this for a long time and it's still confusing at times on a lot of options platforms exactly what everything is. And then you throw a bunch of, weird vol numbers and other things in there. And I think it typically scares off a lot of, retail users that are more accustomed to like the UI you'd see in Robinhood. And that's not to say that, people aren't educated and intelligent about what they're doing, but I think it gets cumbersome on some of these platforms. So I think you guys did a really good job of making it very straightforward and easy to use, which is great.
Yeah, that's the thing about derivatives. It's like there's so many layers to it, and if you throw people into all of the layers at once, it's really confusing. But if you take it one step at a time, like, all right, how does a call work? How does a put work? And then you start understanding the different layers. They're derivatives, right? So they're you're working on these different derivative layers of it. Kind of like one of the things that we try to do is have like a progressive interface. So the more experience you get, then the more of the information that you need shows up and helps you make your trade. I'd like to share a bit about your background for folks that don't know you.
Yeah, totally. So I guess, out of college, started trading energy derivatives in 2010 at a company called DRW, which I think most people in the crypto world will know more now from Cumberland Mining, their OTC crypto trading arm. But it's actually a much bigger firm that trades across all asset classes. And I think there's, probably 1,500 to 2,000 people there now. I could be even low on that. But I worked there from 2010 to 2018. That's where I met Bobby Cho, who is a partner at CMS and was, the head of Cumberland Trading before. And, love trading there, was mostly focused on oil and refined products. Really interesting to see that market evolve over that time. I sound like a bit of a boomer, but like my first 3 months there was actually like on the floor of the NYMEX where they still had like an open outcry pit. So it was cool to see things evolve from that into like more fully electronic venue. And that's really where we evolved the desk to focusing on. And then got the crypto bug in like 2017, 2018, and jumped in full-time into crypto in 2018, where I eventually worked at Circle, and that's where I met a lot of the rest of the CMS team. So I was originally doing business development work at Circle, focusing on USDC. So as we were growing USDC, and then got the bug to get back into trading, and was lucky enough to know Dan and Bobby, and as they were sort of growing out CMS, which is a principal trading firm. So kind of like a hedge fund, but we don't have any clients or customers. So we're just trading on our own behalf, our own risk, and not market making or anything, just sort of position taking and trading on the market. So about half the book now is, very active trading in the market. So, mostly in the derivative space. But the other half of the book is on our investment side, which is a lot of less liquid stuff. We do investments in a number of different projects like PowerTrade that we hold long term, and they're usually things that we think that we're going to use too, and that we can be a part of the community. So we like to take a pretty hands-on approach of being involved in trading on these aspects too.
We've got somebody in the audience, Chris Daubin, claiming that he taught you everything you know about options. Is that true?
Chris is a good friend of mine. Yeah, he's a smart guy, very smart guy. He's got the crypto bug now too. So I've been trying to convince all my friends to move over. Certainly better than trading oil these days, but
Yeah, I mean, so when you look at the volatility in crypto versus oil, well, I mean, there was an interesting event where futures went negative, but yeah, how does that compare? I'm sure it's a big difference for folks coming from the traditional space.
yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because you talk to a lot of people from traditional markets that come over to crypto, and it's usually a really hard change because the market dynamics are so different. And I think in that respect, I was lucky coming from commodities because commodities, you do have some of the highest vol, as opposed to maybe like an equity vol that might be 17% right now. Like oil was generally, 30 to 50 vol, but we saw over 100 vol in oil at times. And so I think it's a good lesson to learn to just see when things get really wild in a market. For a lot of the younger people now that are maybe started off trading at a bank and are trading like S&P options, you know, they've really never seen too crazy of a vol, and they've never seen really like what happens when stuff goes wild. I guess last March being the only caveat there, but it's kind of important to have been in a market where you've gotten your teeth kicked in before and like have really had to manage risk, I think. So in that respect, I feel very lucky to have been in the oil markets where, you can see how stuff can move. But yeah, it is. I mean, the vol is way higher for a good reason. I mean, you get these gap moves, and it provides a lot of opportunity. It's really cool and really interesting, and I think that's what attracts a lot of people to the space, right? Just that opportunity for volatility provides a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I think you brought up that there's some similarities. I mean, the supply shocks that you see in commodities probably map over pretty well over to crypto, right? With people cornering the market and playing kind of different supply games there.
Yeah, totally. And I think the interesting thing in crypto too is you don't really, generally in most traditional markets, there's a lot higher premium on the put side than the call side because people are naturally hedging, or they might be naturally long the underlying and they're looking to hedge. In crypto, you have the opposite where, the calls, at least in this market paradigm, are obviously way over the put side, which means there's not a lot of hedging going on probably, and it's a lot more on the spec side, right? So, and I don't think that's necessarily wrong, right? You see the way the gap moves have happened. Not saying that that's going to happen forever and that there's never going to be, another move the other way, but the dynamics are very different. So, and even now, I remember in 2018 when like the crypto option market was first taking off, you had, it was more of a bear market, and so you had a lot of these people just writing calls against length, right? And that trade worked for a year, and so people tend to get complacent and pile onto stuff and do the same thing over and over. And it's funny now, you see the opposite thing happening now where you see these desks offering structured products that are just like selling put, selling put, selling put. So I think, the market always ebbs and flows, and it's changes obviously when there's different market dynamics, but it's very different from traditional markets in the sense that you've got very different skew dynamics in crypto versus equities or something like that.
So do you see do you consider, I don't know, crypto options to be immature right now and like there's a path to maturity, or it's just different market dynamics, or how do you see that kind of growing?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I talk to people about this a lot, and you're looking at like, if you look at like Binance, right, the biggest venue on the spot side, they do like 20 billion a day in Bitcoin alone on their future side, right? So that's pretty big. But still on the options side, you're looking at like, I think Deribit probably for the last month has averaged like 10,000 Bitcoin contracts. So that's like, that's per day. So like it's 60K, call that like 600 million notional a day. So you're talking about 20 billion versus 600 million, going from the, the most liquid future to the most liquid option market. And that's still really small, right? Versus if you looked at like CME S&P minis, like that trades, I think that usually trades like a million contracts a day, which is something like 50 billion notional. And the options is more like 35, like 30 or 35 billion per day. So like, you can imagine a world where if we're trading 20 billion and Binance futures a day, we should see maybe 10 or 12 billion of options volume a day too. And so that just gives you an idea of like how much growth is still yet to be had. And that's a big reason why we're excited about this space in particular. I think there's a lot of structural issues that like, it's not going to happen tomorrow, right? Like people are obviously trading S&P options for a different reason. I think there's very different players and different market dynamics and different market structures. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I think there's a really good story around why that could happen and how that could happen for sure.
So it sounds like the traditional markets, the options volume is roughly like 50 to 60% of the futures volume.
Yeah, and I didn't do any like long-term analysis on that. This is just me just looking before I jumped on here to try to get a gauge. And I think even recently, I mean, equity vol has been really low and the market's been pretty quiet in equity. So I think the options are probably usually higher than that, would be my intuition. But that was just kind of looking over the past few days to get an idea.
Yeah, pretty excited about that as well. I just read a report from the block where, their report quoted about $2 trillion in futures volume in March, and just under 30 billion in options volume. So yeah, there's like 40x room for growth just to catch up to futures, right?
Yeah, and I think about when you think about the average user in crypto too. I mean, like for a lot of retail people, especially, like if you want to express an opinion and you don't want to get liquidated, options are a great way to sort of do that, right? I mean, if you look at the funding costs right now, like, and you annualize them, I think it's north of 40% to hold a perp length. So like, I mean, that's a lot of juice to pay for being long, right? And obviously I wouldn't call the crypto options cheap. I mean, the vol's still high, but relatively speaking, if you're looking at like a 70% front month vol versus paying 40% annualized premium for a perp, like it's pretty compelling, I think, that there's opportunity there. And so I think more and more people, as education trickles through and awareness, will start to look at some of these, just like they've done in equity options, right? The growth of like Robinhood and some of these other platforms that are super friendly, I think just are a good fit for people that are looking to express an opinion but want limited downside, and sort of something that's easy to manage.
Yeah, I think I agree. When you look at the kind of implied funding rates that you pay for either, I think the appeal of not having to worry about being liquidated is pretty high. If you're long on margin, then you're checking it nonstop. Like, oh shit, am I going to get liquidated? Where's it going? Oh, it's dropped a bit. Oh fuck, what's going to happen? But if you're holding a call, you're just like, all right, I'm good until June 26th. I'm good until then, at least, right? It's a little bit less stressful.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny, like, Dan talks about this a lot, Dan being the partner from CMS, but like above all, the key in this market, given how volatile it is and how, these cascading liquidations we've seen in the past, like above all, the key is to survive and be nimble and available and like ready for when there's opportunity. And so, even if you look at the chart of this past 6 months, most people would say, oh, you just long this market, it's easy, right? Like you can just, it's going higher. But there's been like 4 or 5, 15% plus pullbacks in that time. And so if you're not careful and you get a little overzealous or, try to chase things a little bit, it can be hard. And it's certainly not easy for anyone, I think, even though we're making all-time highs this morning.
Yep, indeed. Um, when we look at like the last year in like retail equity options, I mean, it's been pretty front and center with the different, I mean, just buying Tesla calls and then the whole GameStop thing causing a short squeeze. You've been in the market for a while. I mean, I would think that right now retail is particularly important for options markets. Has it been like that in the past? Has there been kind of a growth over time? What have you seen happening?
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly it's undeniable in equities. I think it was like a Wall Street Journal article a month ago where they were trying to use the percentage of trades that were under 100 lots, because typically if you're an institution, you're going to be doing, 100 lot orders on the options at least, right? Or some variable of that. So I think it was like the percentage had gone up from like less than 10% 5 years ago to now like over 50% are like these increments under 100 lots of the equity options trades. So, I don't think that's necessarily means it's all retail, who knows, but like it's certainly a growing number. And I think it just goes to show that like the market dynamic we're in right now. I think a lot of people, the old thought of like you buy 60% equities and you buy 40% bonds and you show up to work on time and you can retire at 50 is just not the way that people see the world happening anymore. And I think it's cool that people want to take their financial freedom more in their own hands and trade a little bit more actively. I don't necessarily think that's the right solution for everyone, but I think it's cool that people are exploring this more and becoming more active. And I think it's also, it's awesome to see people being successful in doing that when you see some of the game stuff. It's usually it ends up in tears. So it's kind of cool to have seen some people be successful in that regard. And I don't have any other really good data points about exactly like the long-term evolution of what percent is retail and equity options versus institutional, but I think most of it has to do with the fact that there's just better avenues for people to, access this stuff now with, Robinhood and even E-Trade and interactive brokers and these sort of things are just very intuitive and very easy for people to get it. So I think those are all net positives for the market in the long run.
Yeah, it's interesting. Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptos seem to be creating a bit of generational wealth. Yeah, a lot of people, being kind of set for life by being in the space. That's an interesting trend, and it's really very encouraging when people get into crypto. They're like, their first reaction is like, "You tell me what to do. What should I be doing?" They're always like, "Oh, what should I buy Doge? Like, should I buy Icon or whatever?" But then eventually they start doing their own research, because if they just follow anyone, they get wrecked eventually, and then they start learning about new things, and then all of a sudden they're actually really good at like managing their personal finances, and they might be at least good enough to be an investor or a trader and do well. So yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of watch that evolution. Like people really it creates this opportunity when there's no registered financial advisors hand holding you, like, oh yeah, just invest in our 401k package and then you don't have to do anything. People have to learn, and I think it's better for them in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe a bit masochistic of me, but like the best way to learn is a lot of times like failing or, getting a bad beat, right? So, people
Sure.
learn to trade and, it's important that it's hard to learn how to manage risk, right? I think a lot of people can have opinions and it's easy to speculate, but the hard part is learning how to like manage risk. And that typically comes when stuff's not going your way, right? You don't think about risk management when everything's gravy and going your way. So, um, I always tell young people that I talk to, like that are thinking about getting to trading or trying to learn, like, I just tell them, you know, trade on your own for a little bit and like, don't be afraid to like take risks, but in a reasonable amount of money and like, something that you can afford to lose, but something that you want to track and look at and manage risk on. I think that's really important because then, you know, once these things grow, if you haven't learned how to deal with, managing downside or haven't learned how to deal with when stuff's going against you, it's going to be really hard to like make it in the long run for sure.
It's actually we made a few decisions about with PowerTrade for that very reason. So one decision we made was we lowered our minimum contract size, so you can trade up to 4 decimal points of a Bitcoin, and that means you can trade with about $1, sometimes even like 30 cents or something. So we did that on purpose, and that's so that people can learn how options work without having to risk too much of their money. If you go and trade in another platform or a brokerage, they're going to be like, oh yeah, you got to put up like $1,000 or something. And how can you learn to trade options with $1,000? Like if you want to have multiple legs and stuff, and there's minimum order sizes, or minimum contract sizes, like you can't really learn that way, right? So we did that because we think it's very important for people to put in what they're comfortable putting in to learn and get used to it and understand the dynamics. And you can't do this on the stock market. You can actually create an advanced strategy on PowerTrade with like $10. You can't do that anywhere else in the world. I think that's a cool thing about crypto. The other thing we did, if you trade on the stock market and you sell some calls or something, sell some calls on Tesla or GME, and you get completely wrecked. Well, your broker is going to come and like take your house and your car and everything, right? With PowerTrade, we actually made the decision, like your collateral, that's all we get, right? If you're going to get liquidated, all we have is your collateral. And if you go completely wrecked, we're not coming for your house. Like that's it. We just take your collateral and like it's done. So, while we don't want to encourage people to take unreasonable risks, we also don't want to end them financially if they make a mistake. So yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a tight leash out there given the volatility. So I think having some of those, the ability to people to do like structures, if they're going to sell a call, to have it like maybe sell a call spread instead of just an outright call or vice versa.
Yep.
Like having like a known max loss on a position is a great part about options, right? Like, I mean, you're short a perpetual future, your loss can be infinite. If you're short a call spread, you can lose just the amount of the strike difference. So I think, if people want to sleep that are trading crypto, those are good like closed end positions to have on that are a little less risky for sure.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Folks in the audience, if you want to chime in, you have a question or something to say, just raise your hand, and I'll be able to allow you to speak, or you can type a question into the chat box. We can see them there as well. So just as we're going on, feel free to chime in. Ryan, a question for you. What do you see missing in the options space that you're kind of used to in the traditional space?
It's a good question. I mean, there's so much evolving every day. Whereas like it could be a company like Paradigm that allows us to do these like block trades on Deribit that's been really instrumental in helping some of the volumes grow there. that's been a great thing that's evolved. Really, I mean, in the past 6 months has really taken off and grown a ton. I think the thing that not a lot of people know about is there's a lot of great data resources out there that so one of them being like gball is one that we use that's really cool, gball.io. Not investors or anything, it's just I like the guys running it and it's a cool data platform, but that allows you to look at like what the implied vols are and how they've moved over time. um, and then obviously something like skew.com obviously has had a lot of the great data resources on the future side and option side for a while. So I think, typically in traditional markets, you're used to just looking at a Bloomberg and you can kind of pull off everything there. Here it's a bit more fragmented, just like everything else in crypto, right? But there are some great data resources out there that I think people would benefit from looking at, just knowing like what vol has done over the past month, how sort of like some of the skew looks, meaning like how rich are calls versus at the money and how rich are puts versus the at the money vol. So like those things over time will really, I think, help, you know, educate people a lot more and provide great resources. And it took me a while to find some of these resources, and like we're very active in the space. So I can imagine for a lot of retail people, it'd be harder to seek these out and find them. But there's just some great resources that are available to people as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, I'll chase you down for some links after the call. We can put them in the YouTube and point people in that direction. Because
Yeah,
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 like Gvol is a great tool. Yeah, big fan of those guys too.
yeah.
We got a question. Who's Ryan's favorite Peloton instructor? All right. Do you have a favorite Peloton instructor? Because we can see your Peloton.
Don't be fooled. That's just for hanging clothes on there to dry. So you know, um, no, I forget. I don't remember the names offhand. I'm in it for the tech, so I don't remember a lot of the instructors offhand. Unfortunately.
Nice. This is from Cody White. I don't know if you know who that is, but
Yeah,
any other questions from the audience? Maybe what else have you got in the background? Chairs. No, nothing as interesting as a Peloton. Cool. Yeah. How about so a couple of things we're working on with PowerTrade. We're rolling out soon. We're going to roll out perps and futures, which is pretty necessary for delta hedging when you're trading market making options. Along with that, we're rolling out a span margining system. So for those of you that don't know what that means, a normal margining system in crypto is just like, hey, if you want to go 10x Bitcoin, you have to put like 10% worth of the Bitcoin as collateral, right? And if the numbers change, Bitcoin goes down, then it's no longer worth 10%. The way that span margining works is it says, hey, I know you're long Bitcoin, but you got this put that we estimate is going to be worth more money as Bitcoin goes down. So while we don't know like exactly what a put is worth right now, we're kind of estimating that it's worth this much, and it's actually offsetting, the value of your long margin position. And so what it essentially does, it takes all of your different options positions, and it creates a requirement based on the expected value of the different options. So you can be essentially one. I think the simplest strategy, and Ryan, help me out if I'm butchering this. The simplest strategy here to understand this is like, all right, if you're long Bitcoin 2x and you've got like 2 Bitcoin puts with a strike price maybe right around your liquidation price, right above your liquidation price, you pretty much never get liquidated because the value of that put will always be greater than the losses that you're taking from that short. Now that's roughly correct, but not always correct. That's the general gist of span margining, I think. Yeah, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the simplest way to think about it is just sort of like boils your risk down to essentially, you know, what your risk is at that very time and moment. I think like you can have a bunch of, it's particularly helpful for market makers, right? Because they might have a bunch of different options positions on that look pretty chunky, but in aggregate are actually like pretty low risk, because they have, futures hedged against it, and they have other options and other expiries against it. So, if you were just looking at it quickly, you might say, oh my God, this guy's got a super bearish position on for the, April 30th. Like, how's he going to manage this if we rally higher? And then you might be long a bunch of futures and long some like calls behind it. So it really just allows, it's especially helpful for market makers, right? Because they're providing liquidity, they have a bunch of positions on, but they don't necessarily have a ton of risk on. So it just allows for capital efficiency for them. But I think it's also helpful for some retail traders too, because it can allow them to have bigger positions on if it's, if the risk is managed accordingly, right? If they're actually hedging stuff against it. It's just a great tool for capital utility reasons.
I think another example would be if you're doing a call spread, right? You're buying a call and you're selling a call. If you're doing that, then those positions like kind of net each other out, and then the amount of capital or collateral you need to put up in order to have that position open is much smaller than if you're, say, just selling a call.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So this is something, span margining doesn't exist that much, not on that many exchanges in crypto, because most of them don't have options, but it's pretty critical for an options exchange. So yeah, as we roll out perps, then we'll have span margining very soon. And then the other piece I'm really excited about is multi-collateral. So, and this is something that you can't find in crypto options right now. Right now, it's basically single asset for your options. So yeah, we'll have a multi-collateral system. At the launch, it's just USDT, but you'll be able to deposit Bitcoin, ETH, stable coins, various different collateral to kind of set up your account balance. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that roadmap, as it's actually going to be a first for crypto. It doesn't exist in the space right now.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that.
All right, we got some questions from the audience. Is PowerTrade iOS only? When are you going to release Android? Will there be a web interface? So PowerTrade is iOS only this week. We're launching on iOS. Android is in the works. We'll have a beta soon, and then we'll release to Android once the beta phase is complete. And web is also in the works in parallel. So we'll have a beta for that as well. So yeah, we will be multi-platform quite soon. Ryan, does CMS trade options on DEXs?
So we don't currently. Obviously, this is an area that's just sort of growing now, and sort of just blossoming. So it's certainly an area, as I mentioned earlier, like, half of what we're doing is very active trading, and then half of it's sort of this longer term investing in projects that we think we can, help support and that we're going to be active in as part of the ecosystem. And so I certainly think that falls in that second bucket where we're excited about, the growth of options, decentralized options. I think that's inevitably going to be a thing. As I said earlier, I mean, it takes a while, right, for these things to evolve, but I think it's only a natural progression that's going to be, an important thing in the next few years in crypto.
Yeah, as somebody who's been pretty involved in DeFi and does a little bit of angel investing myself, I've done a pretty deep dive into the DeFi options space, and I would say that the technology is still too nascent to do it properly. So you have issues like options writers can't properly delta hedge. There's no margining. You can't really manage your collateral effectively. And what this means is basically your premiums, or the cost to buy an option, end up being about 2 to 10 times more expensive than they are on a centralized exchange. And so there's a lot of issues at play there. A lot of it boils down to risk. And when you need liquidations to happen, they need to happen very quickly. And as we have seen in the past, liquidations on Ethereum, when everything is going crazy, tend to not happen because the network gets frozen with everybody trying to trade and close their positions and manage their positions at once. So a good example of that was when Maker ended up auctioning off a large amount of ETH for $0, because literally nobody else could get their orders through to bid it up to even higher than $0. Um, I think that this would, I've been deep in DeFi. I'm a huge fan of DeFi. I think this problem will be resolved eventually, but I think it's going to be a while. And I think PowerTrade will adopt, the best of whatever happens. So yeah,
Yeah, the
that's
biggest things to me will be the margin requirements, because obviously in DeFi, like you need to have, it's hard to allow people to trade not fully collateralized. And so I think that will be the first major hurdle to figure out. And then the second one will be just liquidity, right? A lot of market makers are used to centralized venues. It can be hard to market make on decentralized venues when you're paying gas for canceling fees, and you've got a lot of other sort of negative externalities to deal with. But I think with some of the L2 solutions and just ETH scaling, I think it's only going to get better. But I think just like we saw in the initial decentralized exchanges for spot trading, there's going to be this evolution of sort of working through some of these pain points before it gets really more widespread adoption.
Yep, agreed. All right, one person said, I love this chat. All right, thank you, anonymous attendee. What are your growth expectations and how do you see yourself versus competitors? Can you discuss tokenomics? Okay, growth expectations. Well, so we touched on this a bit earlier, right? With the growth of the options market, we expect that market to grow very quickly, and PowerTrade is a part of the options market. We kind of see ourselves as the retail segment of the options market. So not too many are really focused on that at the moment. So that's kind of our corner of the market. And when we look at the rest of crypto, retail focused exchanges tend to be much bigger than the institutional focused ones. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Discuss tokenomics. We had a great call with Delphi Digital last week around the new proposal for the Fuel DAO. So the essence of that is that when you have a margin exchange, if any traders go insolvent, then that can become an issue. And we've created this DAO to cover those events. So the DAO pays out to cover the insolvency event if one should happen. So the system is designed to have multiple risk tranches to make sure there's enough capital to cover those events. And yeah, I recommend checking out the video from last week, and there's some tweet threads discussing it with the Delphi proposal. What do you think about Heco apps? Do you know anything about Heco? HECO?
HECO. No.
Yeah, I don't know anything either. But all right, well, we can't answer that. We don't know anything about it. When will you support altcoin options? Do you see demand for options for assets outside ETH and BTC? That's a great question. Yes, we see a lot of demand for altcoin options. In order for altcoin options markets to exist, we need a couple of things to be in place. One, we need a pretty liquid spot market, because otherwise you can manipulate it too much and nobody will want to write options. Two, you need buy side demand. Do people want to buy these options? And then three, we need the sell side demand. Are people willing to be market makers or otherwise hedge by writing options, right? So we see those three things in place for a lot of different alts. There's several different trading desks, and I don't know if CMS does this. There's several different trading desks that are trading options on different alts, basically private OTC deals. And these desks are pretty interested in having more liquid markets to trade these alts and not just run them on private books. I don't know if Ryan, have you guys done any, kind of non-top three options trades?
We haven't yet. I mean, I think there's definitely demand there, but I think the issue right now is that it's very it's very fleeting in terms of like, if you think about the end of like this past summer, everyone was super hot on like Link, and so you saw these Link options trading OTC, and everyone was you know there was a lot of activity there, and that creates very good market dynamic, right? Because market makers want action on both sides, so they're willing to make markets, and then there's a lot of speculative demand, so going both ways, people want to sell it, people want to buy it. And I think now, like more recently, the flavors seem to change almost weekly or bi-weekly. So like what you need and what BTC and ETH have is that constant demand and liquidity of people, wanting to go long, wanting to go short, wanting to express vol opinions. And I think as some of these other further tail tokens, grow in popularity and grow in liquidity, you'll see that eventually. But right now, it's a little bit more idiosyncratic, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will say that, some conversations that we've had with a couple of different trading firms and desks indicate that there's very, very strong interest in making these markets. And there's definitely people interested in trading these markets. Whether if you're staking Polkadot, you might want to lock in your profits with buying a put, hedge that off, or whether maybe you want to buy calls on sushi or something like that. So yeah, I would say that we definitely intend to expand beyond the top three, and coming soon, trademarked. All right, next one. Somebody has raised their hand to talk, so I'm going to allow him to speak. Hey, Matt, you're on.
I think you're on
He's
mute.
There he is.
Definitely press that button. My bad.
Welcome, Matt.
Welcome.
What's on your mind?
Shit, trying to get this product out.
Yeah, ready for Thursday?
Absolutely.
Excellent. You got any question, or just up here to join the fray?
I actually just asked a question in the chat. Brian, do you have any thoughts on Coinbase IPO? Bullish for crypto or no?
It's funny, man. Everyone's really the opinions on crypto Twitter are hilarious. How of course it couldn't be crypto without everyone having just conflicting opinions and yelling at each other about it in the middle of an awesomely bullish market where everyone should be happy, right? But I think it's obviously a net positive. I think. I mean, you think about all the wealth created from this for a lot of early employees, and just the eyes that will be on crypto. A lot of people couldn't really access this asset class, and now they can. And I think if anything, it just draws more attention and brings more eyes in. It's a net benefit for sure. Short term, it's hard to tell, right? Like, I don't think short term, I think it's positive, but like, I think the bigger takeaway is more medium to long term. It brings more people in the ecosystem. It brings more capital in the ecosystem, more eyes. And think about like the people, if you're like an early product manager at Coinbase and you made a lot of money from your stock, like those people aren't taking that money and buying like T-bills with it, right? I mean, maybe they're buying a house or something that they need, and like, but those people are very crypto native, and like, where do they want to park their money? I don't know. I would bet that it stays in the ecosystem. So I think that's more of the medium term to long term thing that I can see happening. Short term, it's hard to tell exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting. it's the legitimization of the whole crypto space, having the most kind of prolific crypto exchange in the U.S. Listing publicly, and I think it's worth more than the NYSE now, or about the same. Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I mean, and since we're in an options talk here, I mean, I kind of see it as Coinbase is kind of a call option on the crypto ecosystem too, right? Because when when times are good in crypto, their volumes are huge, and that stock will probably outperform crypto in certain rallies, just given how much money they make on the fees, and who knows the longevity of some of those margins on the fees. But it's sort of interesting. It's like how, people often talk about like trading gold mining companies, because when gold rallies, like miners are sort of a leverage bet on gold. Not that I'm endorsing gold in a crypto chat. I get my head taken off of that, but it's similar economics, right? They've got certain fixed costs, and they've got a product that really scales and leverages when there's a lot of crypto activity. So it's sort of like, to me, I see it as like a call option on this whole ecosystem.
That makes sense. I think it also paves the way for the rest of the industry to kind of be more mature and more legitimized. For us, I think it's pretty bullish. We're focused on the rest of the world, which doesn't really have friendly user interfaces like Coinbase has in the U.S. So yeah, we're hoping to bring a bit of that for the rest of the world. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. We had a comment. Congratulations on the launch tomorrow. The launch is actually in 2 days, but thank you.
Depending where you are in the world, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think at this point right now, it's 2 days for everyone.
Okay, got it.
Yep. All right, another question. Do you think large parts of TradFi will eventually be made redundant in 10 years? Do you want to answer this?
I mean, so I think certainly, and I think they're probably asking in regards to crypto. Like, obviously, I think there's going to be aspects of crypto that can disrupt and displace a lot of the traditional market infrastructure right now. I don't think that's going to happen overnight. I don't think we're going to be taking out mortgages on our house that are based on a Ethereum smart contract anytime soon. But like, I can certainly see how that can happen, and I certainly can see how the benefits to using a lot of this technology in sort of replacing a lot of middlemen, and making a lot of these things a lot more streamlined. I think generally the way these things work out, and I'm not Nostradamus, but like, you'll see bigger institutions start to use some of the tooling that we're seeing in crypto and sort of some of these innovations, and there'll be a lot of innovation from this ecosystem that's brought into traditional finance that really helps change a lot of the way they do things. I don't think it's like sell Morgan Stanley stock because they're not going to be around in 5 years type of thing. But I think it's like the way that Morgan Stanley is going to look in 5 to 10 years is going to look a lot more like some of the things that we're doing too, which I think is net positive for both sides. I've got too many boomer friends that are still in traditional finance, so I can't dox them too hard. But that's the nice answer, I guess.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I don't know if the time frame of 10 years is quite right. It could be more, it could be less. I do think that the kind of the essence of DeFi is basically the future of finance. The way that plays out is always different. Like, we kind of have the DeFi purism that we have on Ethereum today, and the I don't know, the way that usually works is like, things kind of, the legacy systems and the brand new systems kind of just build towards each other over time, and then we kind of end up at this like middle point that's kind of like, it's DeFi-ish. That's kind of where I expect to see it go. But then again, like, with crypto exchanges adding synthetic or tokenized stocks, we could actually, we could potentially actually see a complete overhaul of the industry if the up and comers can kind of get things working in a legitimized way faster than the established players. And if it's far better than the way things work, then you could see a lot of people switching over. So yeah, it's interesting. There's possibilities. The incumbents usually are quite dismissive of the possibilities, but they're never happy when they actually happen. Just look at the history of tech is filled with examples. But yeah, I would say, some of the things that we're looking at for the future of PowerTrade, like non-custodial settlements, and in particular, non-custodial settlement with other exchanges. I think that's pretty interesting. Just the way that the traditional markets work relies a lot on trust and custody and paper contracts, and we can automate and decentralize and kind of make more transparent and open all the different financial contracts that are running the system today. So yeah, I think certainly what we see here today is part of the future. Yeah. We have Gerald. Gerald says, "I'm in TradFi." All right. Is he a friend of yours?
Unless I get the last name, I don't know.
It's just Gerald with a G.
Nice. Sounds like a good lad. I don't know. I might know him.
You know all the TradFi people, right?
Yeah, they're all boys of mine for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is interesting though to see a lot of traditional finance people. Back in 2008, I remember like a lot of us just punting around in our PA, like when we were still trading other things, and a lot of that's still happening now. But eventually, you get the bug enough to where you're like, well, if I'm doing this like more in my PA and enjoy this more than I'm doing my traditional job, then like, what am I doing? And so I think that's sort of the gateway drug for a lot of these TradFi people is getting the door that way, and then realize how much actually is going on here and how awesome a lot of the teams are and the people and how much there is to learn. And I think that's the gateway drug for sure.
I've got a group of friends. We have a little group chat, and it's basically made up of people that used to work in investment banking that made more than their yearly bonus, like trading crypto, just like on their lunch break or whatever. And so they quit their job because they're like, "What is this? Like, I can do so much better in crypto." So it's been very fun to watch over the past what has it been, 4 years now. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're coming up on the top of the hour. If there's any other final questions, raise your hand, type them in. Now's the last chance. Ryan or Matt, you guys have anything to add?
I don't think so. I mean, excited for you guys at PowerTrade. It's just having messed around with the beta. It's you guys have come a long way, and there's a lot of great stuff there. And so, yeah, excited to see this industry or this crypto options niche grow a little more and more people get involved. So I think we're definitely very early on a lot of this stuff. Like we were talking about with those numbers earlier, like there's a lot of room for growth, and it's exciting for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, we're pretty excited. In case you missed it, we are launching on Thursday, April 15th in the Apple App Store. So if you're not, an American, you'll be able to download the app and trade some options with USDT on Thursday. So yeah, pretty excited. We'll be here all week. And thanks for coming on, Ryan. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, great training time. Congrats again.
All right. Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Later.